Hello and welcome to another episode of TOTs. I'm your host, Ben Gardner. Today on the show, we have Carlos Soto. He is the founder and CEO of Nosotros Tequila. Carlos, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ben. Thank you so much for having me, man.
Absolutely. I've been wanting to have you on for a little while now. I think you have probably one of the coolest entrepreneur stories that I've ever heard. So why don't you start by telling me a little bit about yourself and how you came to the United States?
Totally, man. No, appreciate the kind words. It's honestly been a wild journey. But yeah, I'll start right over there. So I'm originally from Costa Rica. I was born and raised over there. I lived there till I was 18, and then I got a scholarship to come to school here in the U.S. I went to Loyola Marymount University here in L.A. And honestly, it was an interesting experience at first, just kind of going into the U.S. Obviously, a lot of culture shock and understanding a different culture altogether. One of the main things, was also the whole drinking environment and the different selections that you find here in California versus in Costa Rica. Costa Rica is more of a rum country. And here it was super interesting to seeing how tequila was, a very well-known thing, at least here in California, ever since I came to the US. And during my senior year, I was taking a class that focused a lot on pitching pitching business ideas, pitching brand ideas. And our teacher actually told us, hey guys, for the next assignment, just completely forget about technology for a second. Come up with something that has absolutely nothing to do with technology, and get back on Monday with an idea. And a little bit of the reason there was everyone was grabbing their phones and being like, hey, I want to do the Uber of this, the Uber of that. This is middle 2015, and I was like, hey, okay, guys, come on. There's a lot more industries out there. Right. So that was on a Friday. I went out and bought a tequila drink with a couple of friends. And for the first time ever, I kind of paid attention to like what was happening in the industry, like people kind of going in and doing different calls and trying tequila on the rocks or just sipping on it or shooting it or making margaritas or whatever. So I looked into the industry and, saw that it had been growing, that that it had an appellation of origin. That means that it can only be produced in the town of Tequila in Mexico. So I pitched the idea of creating a brand of tequila that would basically focus on a few things. One of them being a sustainable brand, a little bit of the whole marketing idea, make it a little bit more experiential. But back in 2015, a lot of the big name brands were very legacy brands. They seemed like old brands, nothing that would target to our basically our age demographic and just people that are kind of interested in a little bit more of the craft and spirit world, right? So I ended up pitching the idea. A couple of weeks went by and I kept on thinking about this idea. And I eventually just got to the point where I was like, okay, I need to figure out whether or not this actually works. So I grabbed my savings and I booked a one-way ticket to go to Mexico. Spent almost a month over there learning about the industry behind tequila, meeting people, the chemistry that goes into the whole process of tequila, understanding the different regions and how that affects basically the taste profiles and everything. And I was able to meet this amazing family and came back with a few different samples of tequila that we had made during the time over there. Did some tastings with some friends and to bore you with the story, by the time I was about to graduate, we had basically a brand name, a sample design of what we were going to do. It came down to two things. One, figuring out my visa. Obviously, I'm not American.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to apply for a visa and kind of get that paperwork going. And then second part, funding. I ended up just going to Bank of America and taking a personal loan. And the most they would give me at the time was $18,000. And that was enough to just get the ball rolling.
Right.
And that's basically how Nosotros started. At that point, Mike, my founding partner, had come on board, and it was the two of us. He was finishing school, I was out of school, basically just doing this as a passion project type of thing. And it was just us kind of working on it and developing. In January of 2017 was when we sold our first bottle. And to be completely honest, man, the first 4 or 5 months just absolutely sucked. It was
Really?
Absolutely miserable. We were young kids kind of going out there and trying to convince people we had a good product. But the worst part was that we weren't even able to get people to try it. Like that was the tough part. It wasn't that they weren't liking the product. It was just that they weren't giving us the time of the day. And there was a lot of like learning that went on with that. But right before I was getting ready to head back to Costa Rica at the time, and we had I think it was like $2,000 left in the bank account, and we received a message from our importer that was telling us about the San Francisco World Spirit Competition and how it's so reputable, and then within all the competitions it actually carries weight, and it's actually worth it, yada yada yada. So at the time I was like, okay, let's see where this goes, and I ended up submitting our Blanco, which was the only SKU that we had at the time, and we sent it out there, and it's a blind tasting, which is awesome, and we ended up winning the competition altogether. We got
Wow.
double gold, which is when all the judges decided that you're a gold product. We took the best tequila of the show out of all categories, including age, expressions, and everything. Coming on top of Herradura, Siete Leguas, like some very big players in the industry. And I just grabbed that and like literally started sending it out to all the people that we were trying to meet with. And suddenly people started responding, and I was like, okay, let's see what you guys got. You've been bugging me enough. So yeah, after that, we were able to secure a few tastings, and then we had a few inbound actually requests for the product, which was awesome. We were able to land our first retail partner, which was Total Wine and More. Then Bevmo, then we started growing. We started working with Bristol Farms, Lazy Acres, Gelson's. Now we're working Albertsons, Bonds Pavilions here in California. And fast forward to today, and in the last month, we've launched Illinois, and actually today we're officially launching in Nevada and Las Vegas.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been a wild journey. We have a team of 10, all great, fantastic people that good, very, very young, both by age and mentality. We're a small and nimble team, and I think that's been a huge benefit to our category. And we also launched a personal product that was the mezcal. We launched the mezcal not too long ago, about 2 months ago.
You're repping the brand there really nicely with that hat.
I appreciate it, man. So yeah, I think that's a bit of the nutshell story of how Nosotros came to be.
Yeah. So from my experience in being an entrepreneur and from what you're telling me about your story, talk to me about the dichotomy between, you sell your first bottle. It's been this huge struggle. You had to take out a personal loan. This is a risky thing for you to do. It's always risky starting a business, but especially this business and being in the alcohol industry. You sell your first bottle. I'm sure you're elated. And then 4 and 5 months go by and you can't get anybody to try it. What kept you going during that time, knowing like, if I fail, I'm gone?
Yeah. I think I think you put it pretty well. At the end of the day, it's a lot of that last sentence you mentioned. If I fail, I'm gone, type of thing. And I think having no plan B whatsoever was a huge part of it. Just because it's the little, hey, like if this doesn't work out, I'm basically just starting from zero, and I was fine with that. I'm thankful that I'm from a country like Costa Rica, that it's relatively stable, it's relatively safe compared to the rest of our neighbors in Latin America. At the end of the day, if things didn't work out, I wasn't going back to a war-torn country or something of that nature, right?
Right.
Which gave me a little bit of reassurance, but at the same time, I also wanted to stay in the U.S. and I was fully committed to the idea of creating this brand. And Mike, my partner, and I always joke that if we would have known how hard it actually is to get into this industry, we probably wouldn't have done it. So it's one of those things where ignorance was truly bliss. But I think just having that no plan B scenario was a huge push for it. Also serendipity. I have to say also serendipity was a big part of why we kept going, because every time, I think you have a lot of lows and a lot of hits and a lot of things that happen along the way, but every once in a while you get a tiny little victory or tiny little something that kind of pushes you in that direction.
Yep.
and then you're like, okay, like this might work. We might actually be doing something positive here, right?
Yeah. That's huge. And you talk a lot about not having that plan B. And, any financial manager, your parents, your grandparents, they'll tell you like, that's not a good move. That's not like the smart thing to do. But I think it's also like, to use kind of, I guess, kind of a crass example. That's like getting a prenup on your marriage. Like a lot of people see that as like, okay, yeah, it's going to work out, but like if it doesn't, I'm going to be okay. And I think when you go into a situation sometimes like that, not to judge people who get prenups,
Yeah.
but when you go into a situation, you're saying it might fail. And if it fails though, like I'm going to be okay, you're not actually risking anything. And when you're not risking anything, you don't have that grit in you that like this has to work. So I think that, to me, like that's a huge part of probably what made your brand. Is like you could probably come out with a tequila called No Plan B. Like this is your plan A, B, C, all the way down to F. So, you came here from Costa Rica. What inspired you to come here, and how did you eventually get that scholarship?
Yeah, yeah. And right before going into your question, I'm just gonna
Yeah,
add one thing, and there, uh, I think obviously everyone has different profiles of risk tolerance and what they deem as appropriate, and it's fine, man. Like one thing that I kind of dislike about the whole entrepreneurship term and how it's grown recently is that for some reason now it's like we live in this world where everyone is trying to like become an entrepreneur and like become a this and that, and like you have, and not to criticize what they do, but you have like people like Gary Vaynerchuk, or you have people like Grant Cardone, which are like, they have really solid messages, but there's a lot of people that become obsessed with it, and it's like when they fail or when they can't do it, they become super frustrated. And at the end of the day, the way I do my risk managing is going to be very different than the way you do it or the way someone else does it.
right.
And I think in that sense, you just got to do whatever works for you, right? You can't gauge everyone with the same ruler, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I was just going to throw that in there. And
No,
at the
I
end of the
like
day,
that. I like that because, we see these people like Gary and like Grant, and you're like, I want to be like that. I want to have what they have. I want to have that following. I want to be that famous. I want people to look up to me. But something that I find, especially with Gary, not as much with Grant, but definitely with Gary, is they tell you like there's no promise that you're going to be successful. You can follow every single thing that they do to a T, but it might not work for some random reason. And I think if you're a true entrepreneur, I'm going to make a very, very clarifying and specific statement. So nobody hate me, but if you're a true entrepreneur, first of all, risk is part of the game. And I think
yeah,
second, failure drives you forward. And if you take one failure and you let that define yourself, I don't really think that you're an entrepreneur. You have to be learning from that and use that to adapt in the future. And if, it's a one and done, and then you're just like, oh, I'm going to, do whatever for the rest of my life, then how can you call yourself an entrepreneur? Failure is part of the game.
totally. And you see people like Elon Musk, for example, that he's been through plenty of failures before actually getting to the point in his life where he's at right now, right?
Exactly.
But bottom line, I think on that argument, in the most important message I kind of wanted to drive with that was, I think self-awareness comes into this type of thing, and it's realizing where your capabilities are, where your strengths are, and kind of capitalizing on those, um, and also just understanding what makes you happy. Like there's people that I've seen, plenty of people that are like doing it, and they're doing it successfully, but they hate it. They hate the day to day, and it's that's not the point of what we're doing. It's you get one shot at this whole thing we call life, and it's like you shouldn't be upset with like your day to day environment, right?
Right. Yeah.
So sorry, went on a tangent over there, but
No, no, I
kind of
agree. And
wanted
it's
to.
it's important because a lot of people, go through life not liking what they do, but it pays well, the benefits are good. And I think the least the least that you can do for yourself in that situation, if little 22-year-old me were to offer some advice to probably people who are listening who have much more figured out than I do, for me, it's like you can do both. You can do something that makes you miserable because you need to do it for the pay, or you've got medical bills, or the benefits are too good to pass up. But find something also that's going to make you happy, because like you said, we get one shot. We're here for a
Yeah.
very limited amount of time, and how you spend it is really important. And if you're spending it being miserable, then you got to switch something up. You can't be in that for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where self-awareness comes into play. And kind of going back to your question, actually, I think this is a perfect transition into, for me, it's a very specific scenario. Growing up in Costa Rica, it's a country that is very, I think it just gives you this appreciation for life and nature, and the daily beautiful environments that you're surrounded with. And funny enough, it took me leaving to be able to perceive that, right? There's a saying that I love, which is there's no perspective without distance. And kind of having a little bit of that distance definitely helps sometimes, and it helped me as a person become more self-aware of what I deemed important in life. And it's something I try to incorporate on a daily basis, which is,
Right.
hey, this is who I am, and this is what makes me happy, and I want to work my ass off, and want to make sure that we build something that is special and is memorable, and people get a great experience with a great product. But at the end of the day, there's also a lot of take a step back and look at what's happening, because life goes, right.
Yeah, exactly. And so you kind of did that like almost to a T. You came from Costa Rica, which I visited. It is probably the most beautiful place that I've ever seen, and anywhere that I've been. It is absolutely gorgeous. And you're surrounded by all that beauty, but you took a step back and you made a change, and you came here for a reason. And I want to know why. What inspired you to be here, to start this company, and to be who you are now instead of just staying where you were?
Totally, no, and to be completely honest, there's been a lot of like switches in my, or there were a lot of switches, especially during my college time, and even before that. My original plan was, I was looking at potentially going to Argentina or Spain. I was going to Costa Rican high school, and then I switched to an international high school within Costa Rica to kind of broaden my horizons a little bit. This was a conscious decision I made back when I think I was 16, 17 at the time. So I did the International Baccalaureate, which is a program, for high school students, and they focus a lot on like kind of seeing life as a global citizen type of thing. Um, and there's actually a fair of California schools that came to my school at the time, and they were just chatting wonders about California. They're pitching like, hey, California is basically like if you have Costa Rica in the U.S. and they had a baby, that's what California is. You have like the best of both worlds, and that was very appealing at the time. And to be completely honest, I grew up obsessed with the show Rocket Power, and that played a huge role in it. And the more I looked into like the schools and everything, and I realized like the prize was very high. But if I was able to get a scholarship and make it work, then thankfully I was able to do that and come over here. Um, it was curiosity, man. It was curiosity of understanding a different world, and something like the U.S. and California specifically. There's something magical about this place that draws people from all over the world, right? You have like all the loose screws from all over the world end up here, and I include
Yep,
myself in that.
absolutely.
uh, and it's what makes it a wonderful place, man.
It
Uh,
is. It is a wonderful place. And I think something that you said that strikes me a lot, that I have such an issue with certain parents who I'm not gonna name. I don't think my parents ever told me this, but I know a lot of parents who teach their children curiosity killed the cat when they're younger. And it's this phrase that like we grow up with and you just get used to. And parents probably say it because their 2-year-old or 5-year-old is getting into stuff that they shouldn't be in the house, and they're
yeah,
being, they're wrecking things. But telling a child and kind of, subconsciously influencing this kid that like you shouldn't be curious about things, even if that's not really what they want to do like for the rest of their life. Like you're not trying to tell a kid like never be curious, but in that moment, like growing up with that and trying to kill that curiosity because it's hard, I think that can ruin your life. And that's, I think, probably also, a minor reason, but maybe one of the reasons why people end up in dead end jobs and they're
yeah,
miserable, but they don't know that they can go look for something else that's going to make them happy. That's kind of like a taboo. And so I see you as kind of like the opposite of that. You're like, no, curiosity made the cat very happy.
Curiosity made the cat very happy. No, I think you're hitting something that is a societal problem, and I think it is a societal problem at a global scale. Just because it's not something that you see just here in the U.S., you see it all over the world, and some cultures more than other. But I think the only thing I'll add to that is like it's weird that we are completely wired as society to like frown upon mistakes and failures. Like we
Right?
spend so much time like even think about like growing up. I think you mentioned it with the kids and everything, but it's always like, hey, don't make mistakes. Like just careful. Don't risk failing. Like that is such a and I want to. Can I swear on this?
You could
it's
swear. Go
it's
ahead.
such a fucked up system that goes into place because you're literally forcing people to basically not experience what failure is. And at the end of the day, being able to fail teaches you where you went wrong, and teaches you you're going to be faced with very similar situations all throughout your life, right? So certain scenarios change, but at the end of the day, the essence of a lot of situations are very similar. And that constant failure, whether it's at a business level or a personal level or even like sports level, whatever it is, that's what teaches you. And for some reason, we try to educate kids and society as a whole, like, hey, stay away from mistakes. What?
Why? Right?
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And I feel like we're in the same vein here of, you know, we've had in this country and many other countries a long history of entrepreneurship. And especially in this country, this is like the entrepreneurship country. And I think that, what's starting to change with people like Gary Vee, who are influencing people, they're starting to say, like, you don't have to do everything the way that everybody else has always done it. You don't have to do it the way that your great grandfather did, your grandfather, your dad. You don't need to. And so I think that's within the same vein because, a lot of kids, especially in this country, and I know in other countries as well, are told from a very young age, this is what you should do. This is how you get there. Stick to the plan. And any deviation, any failure, of sticking to that plan is seen as really negative. But some of the most successful people that we have out of this country, out of other countries, didn't stick to the plan. So, for you, what do you think like that means for you growing up? Like were you influenced to stick to a plan and you broke it, or were you kind of on the track?
Um, well, I think I was lucky in the sense that my parents were always very understanding, of doing crazy things or just trying a bunch of sports and whatnot. I'm the first generation graduate too. I was the first one in my family to graduate from college. And I'm super thankful for that opportunity because obviously I learned a lot more outside the classroom than inside. But at the end of the day, I think that's what college is. It's an opportunity to grow as a person and as a kind of building relationships and unless you're in a super technical degree type of thing, at the end of the day, everything you can learn on Google, right? So it's like
Right.
what you're really getting out of an education is that experience of meeting people and kind of building certain experiences and whatnot. So for me growing up, it was interesting seeing just how other families did it. I think just seeing how everyone had like different paths or whatever, and kind of knowing that my dad is also an entrepreneur. He started a company, a nougat company in Costa Rica.
Really?
Very early on with his family. He was 17 years old, and that was out of necessity. So
Right.
that I think really inspired me to from a very early age to know that it takes work to get to certain places. Um, and my mom, she is nothing but love. She's a little bit more cautious when it comes to life, and hey, you sure you want to do this or whatever. But when I told them I wanted to leave the country and go experience something else, at the end of the day, both of them were like, okay, whatever you want to do, take the risk, go after it. As long as you can sustain the work and actually do it, go for it. And by all means, experience it, grow. So I was definitely privileged in that sense that both of my parents were very, very understanding. They were divorced, but at the same time, great relationship and always there and very present. So
Yeah,
nothing but love for them.
that's awesome. Yeah, I think, supportive parents go a long way. And I think some people have them, some people don't. Um, but I think on the whole, it really comes down to determination and persistence. And a lot of your story also has to deal with persistence. You spent 4 or 5 months trying to convince people to try your tequila. What in you says that, I need to be persistent. I need to never give up on this. And, what did it feel like after getting rejection after rejection after rejection?
I think it's been a result of my life experiences too, man. It's every time I'm about to give up on something or whatever it is that I set my mind to, like right before I don't give up, something happens where it goes in a certain place. And, I've said this in certain conversations sometimes, and I hate the term self-made entrepreneur. I hate that. It's like, who have you seen that is a self-made entrepreneur? No one. It always takes at least one or two people that believe in you in some shape or form, whether it's the people, your investors, whether it's the people that buy your product, whether it's the people that first gave you an opportunity to go play something. Yeah, it takes work. You need to go over there and be nagging and be persistent and not be scared to put yourself out there. And there's nothing worse than cold calling when you're first starting. That's like some of the biggest learning things you can go through, and that's something I recommend everyone to go through. Like cold calling is such a cool learning experience. But at the end of the day, even the person on the other side of the phone that's going to pick up and say like, "Hey, yeah, come try it." That person changed your trajectory, right? It's like the person that actually gives you the opportunity to go, and I think that's what has made humanity as a whole kind of get to the point where we are. It's the human interaction, the back and forth, and being able to talk and being able to build community. Ergo, the name of the brand is Nosotros. At the end of the day, it's all about us, people coming together. Nosotros means us in Spanish, just in
Right.
case
Yep.
if anyone's
For our
listening that
non
doesn't.
bilingual
Yeah.
listeners.
But yeah, I think the whole premise behind giving up, it's like there's someone that's gonna sooner or later believe in you. You just need to find them.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Support from a lot of people is really why people become successful. And I think, people point to really, really successful people, or the most successful people like Jeff Bezos, and they're like, he did it all himself. And then you actually look into his story and you're like, well, he did a lot of it himself, but there's people that were crucial along the way that gave him a chance or that supported him when nobody else would. And that's
100%.
how he got to where he
100%.
is today. Yeah.
That and your team, man. Your team plays a huge role in it. That we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Michael and PJ and Ryan and Kiana. Like everyone, I could name everyone on the team that has played a role in this. And every little grain of salt that goes into the pile, changes, like goes a long way. It's like compound interest.
Right. Yeah,
A little
exactly.
bit, a little bit every day. It goes a long way, man. And when you have it from multiple directions, it
Sure.
changes things.
Now, being a business owner and an entrepreneur, and we were talking about failure a little bit earlier, you've also gone through some failures with Nosotros in the beginning, and I'm sure on a regular basis, just like most businesses do. Talk to me about how you and your team, which are a very tight knit group, how you guys handle failure and how you move on from that.
Yeah, for sure. We fail a lot. We fail a lot. We've gone through a lot of tests in every aspect of the brand, whether it be of the company, whether it be on the brand side, whether it be on the sales side, whether it be on the logistics side, trying new things, presentations, whatever. I think one of the main I'm kind of going back and forth a little bit on this one, just because I was going to say one of the main things that we've been able to do very well is being able to cut something when it's not working, type of thing, and
Sure.
not try to go into after a sunk cost type of environment. But it is interesting seeing sometimes how that plays out, and again, going back to the whole idea of failure and learning from something, because if we see that it's not working, we're nimble and we're small enough that in the sense that we can cut something and just start from zero, right? And as
Right.
long as that transition it's not too crazy, it's not too difficult, it's doable. And early in the company's life, we did a lot of that. I think now at this point, we're a lot more established and a lot more of a I think our brand identity is very specific into how we do things and after what we go in terms of clients and the partnerships that we develop. But early on, it was just going through a lot of repetition, testing, seeing what
Sure.
happens. Pretty much a scientific method in the sense of you build a hypothesis, this is going
Yep.
to work, you go and test it. If it doesn't work, then what do we do? If it works, we keep going with it.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. So a huge part of what you do, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, is you have to have to in order to be a real tequila, you have to have part of the process done in Tequila, Mexico. So talk to me about you as a young entrepreneur getting on a plane, flying to Mexico, and actually finding your supplier of it's agave, right? That goes into the tequila.
Yeah, so there are multiple parts that goes into the process of making tequila. Tequila has an appellation of origin, as I mentioned, I think earlier. What that means is that in order to be called tequila, there are certain states within Mexico where you're allowed to produce tequila. Same with mezcal. There's a different range of states that you can work with. And then in tequila, there's you have mixtos, which is people that do 51% agave, and the rest is who knows whatever neutral grain spirit they're using or whatever. Those tend to be the lower quality ones, which
Yep.
it kind of I'd recommend people stay away from those.
Yep.
Then you have the 100% the agave, which is kind of doing it a little bit more the traditional way. But anyway, so going back to your question, I think it was definitely a benefit that my first language is Spanish. Obviously, that kind of establishing that. I think being in the 21st century and being able to do Google searches and actually see, what the factories are and like the different people that are working over there, and like kind of do preemptive calls before going down there, and just trying to establish a bit of rapport with the people as I was kind of trying to gauge the meetings and everything. That was huge. But there are many parts that go into it, and I think that was again trial and error, which is you're dealing with a network of farmers from, in our case with Nosotros, what we do is that we do a blend of agaves from two different regions. We harvest agaves up in the highlands and down in the lowlands. The highlands tend to be a little bit sweeter and more citrusy. Lowlands a little bit more peppery and earthy, and we combine those and create a very, very balanced flavor that kind of has a little bit of both. That's what makes Nosotros really special. And kind of navigating through those environments where you're dealing with farmers from both regions, you're dealing with the suppliers that make the boxes, you're dealing with the suppliers who make the corks, and the suppliers who make the bottles, the suppliers who make the little security seal that goes into the bottle. Then you got to send everything to one place where everything gets put together. It's
It's a lot.
it's easy to get flustered in the middle of it.
Yep.
And I will say definitely it gets easier with time for anyone that's kind of going over that experience of just kind of navigating how to put things together. It gets easier with time. I think the more you go, the more you do it, it's easy to categorize things into easier groups.
Sure.
Not sure if that
Yeah.
makes any sense, but I think that's definitely been the experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you first enter an industry too, especially something as complicated as manufacturing alcohol, it's going to be a lot. But I think it kind of speaks to you and your fortitude that you've been able to create this brand basically out of thin air, a couple years ago when you were still in college, I think that's huge. So you guys are doing really well right now. As kind of stated, you guys did really, really well. And that kind of saved your company in terms of that, taste test. You guys got double gold. So you guys are exploding. Did you ever think that you would be where you are now, where you're opening in different states like Nevada? Like, did you ever see yourself being in this position?
Well, I think that's there's always been the goal of creating something that lasts, right? We've since the start, the premise was always like, let's create a company that, like, if it's going to last forever, and having that north made us very, very cognizant of our environment, of what we were doing with our money. We've always been very frugal with our expenditures, and we operated as a percentage of revenue, which allowed us to stay very, very on budget month over month. Because at first it's just, you're playing a survival game, right?
Right.
Especially in our industry, it's what it is. The last couple of months, that the last few months, I'd say the last year as a whole, it's been a bunch of different combinations of things. Our category thankfully continues to grow. People are understanding a little bit more that the tequila and mezcal environment too is very, very big, and you have a lot of selections, and there's a lot of craft players, and there's a lot of corporate players, and thankfully, very similar to the a bit of the frenzy that happened with craft beer, a few years back. I think that's what we've been seeing in the spirit world, and more people are focusing and transitioning into non-corporate brands, into more artisanal brands, into brands that might have a little bit less of a corporate perception type of thing, and just try different flavors and different profiles. So that's definitely been a little bit of a positive for us.
Sure.
But to kind of go after your question, I think at the end of the day, it wasn't quite envisioned that we were going to grow this fast, but we've definitely prepped for it, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Just because it's being careful and kind of navigating things, and as it goes, we've been able to operate very, very quickly and swiftly
Right.
into how things have happened. And obviously with the current situation with COVID and everything, there's been a change in the consumer demographic too. They've kind of switched a little bit more to more premium products, given that they're not spending that much in bars and restaurants, and
Right.
they go to retail, and they're trying to venture out there and try different things. So that's been a positive for us.
Yeah. That's awesome. Now I have a little bit of a tough question for you. I don't mean to put you on the spot,
Hit
but
me. Let's see
you
where we
talk
go.
about, yeah, let's do it. You talk about building a company that will last, and a company that from the start was built to last a very long time and be successful. Could your company right now survive without you leading it?
Um, it's a good question. Yes, I think it could survive. It would take some changing, obviously some adapting. I'm not saying it wouldn't take a hit, but I think we've gotten really good at the team that we've built, and we all have our positions and whatnot, but at the end of the day, there's so much interlinking into what we do on a daily basis, and how we do it. And Mike, my co-founder, he's the CFO of the company. He handles a lot of the finance and the day-to-day stuff, and building Excel models and everything. But at the same time, he's in many of our marketing meetings. And when we go to Mexico, he comes by, and like, he understands how the system goes. And
Right.
same with PJ, who handles all of our sales. Like, he understands a lot of that. I think the relationship with everyone in Mexico would be a little bit tougher of a transition.
Sure.
But it is I think we've done a good job of making sure that everyone, regardless of what position they have, understands the totality of the business. Um,
Sure.
I think there's a term in biology called emergent properties, which is like when you have multiple single acids, they have their own properties, but when you combine them as a whole, there's emergent properties that otherwise wouldn't come. And I think that's definitely what we've done at Nosotros. At the end of the day, it's a living and breathing organism.
Absolutely. I agree. And, you know, in asking that question, I must also admit, I was talking to a member of your team the other day to help set up this interview. And for the first like hour that I was talking to this guy, I thought that he was the founder because I was like, oh yeah, like I completely blanked on his name. I was like, this is probably Carlos. And he's talking about this company like it's his own, and like this is his ownership, and this is his company that he's helped to found, and look how well we're doing, and just so inspired by what he's been able to accomplish with the company, that at a certain point he was like, and yeah, that's why I think, you know, you should have Carlos on your show. And I was like, wait a minute, this isn't so, you know, it's a little
I love it.
embarrassing
I
for
love
me.
hearing that, man. I love hearing that.
I'm
That's
supposed to be the guy that's on top of everybody, and knows all the names and bringing people on the show. But to me, that speaks, you know, volumes about your organization, because a huge issue that a lot of people have at a lot of companies, especially when they're larger or especially when they're smaller in terms of revenue, is it is hard to get the people as excited that are working for you as you are about your own company. But here is this company that you have helped to create and that you founded, and was on a whim, and something that you're like, you know what, I think that this might work. And the guy just talking about his role in the company convinced me without even trying that he was the founder. And so I think that was huge. You know, big round of applause for you guys, because that to me is like the mark of a true company that people are excited about. They love to go to work, and they love the environment that they're in.
I love hearing that, man. I'm a true believer that culture trumps strategy every time, every single time. And I think that's been the very backbone of our company. That's been an ethos that, you know, I can't tell you if it's scalable. Maybe we can talk in 10 years and see how we did with it.
I will
Um,
have you back on in 10 years at least to talk about where
yeah,
you guys have gone.
but so far it's worked, and then and it's not a fad by any means. You know, it's finding people that kind of have that mentality of working hard, playing hard, kind of go every day, and put your best out there, but also to have fun and enjoy the environment that you're in, right? um I think that plays a big role.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how could it not play a big role? You have people within your organization, you've built this team, and they are unbelievably passionate about this project, to the point where I kind of see them all as founders. You know,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
repping your brand, and they
And
really help to get you where you are today. Not to say that your initial risk and your initial investment, that is really truly like the cornerstone of all of these businesses, but we also talk about the effect that other people have had on it, and, you know, how much it says about your company that these people are that passionate about their job. They enjoy it, they definitely
it's
see it as a
a
family, and
huge,
it's their life.
yeah, a huge part of it too is just we don't give that many instructions. I think, you know, when we talked about entrepreneurship, it's like you can totally be an entrepreneur within a company and kind of develop your own environments. And you know, we have weekly meetings where we kind of touch, but at the end of the day, everyone kind of has their own division where they're kind of going out there, whether it's on the sales front, you're developing whatever tactics you're going to have. You're going to have your set of partners that you work with, and that you foster those relationships and build whatever image the rest of the people are going to have of Nosotros, whether it's on the marketing side. You know, you can develop whatever strategy or planning you have, whether it's on the retail side and you're going out there and seeing like, hey, how can we position something where it just looks different? How can we do things different? Like, I think being able to delegate like that, and that was arguably the hardest part at first as we grew for me, going from that standpoint where, you know, you're doing everything, and then suddenly you start delegating things. Takes a mental switch, and it's not an easy thing, but I think everyone that has come on board into the team has taken it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's awesome. I have one final question for you. It's another stump question. I'm sorry. I got to do it. You're doing
Go for
too
it.
well. You're doing too well. My final question for you is, if you weren't doing Nosotros Tequila, what would you be doing and where would you be?
Who? Um, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I've thought about it a couple of times. I have a big passion in soccer specifically. Growing up in Costa Rica, maybe I love seeing how the sport has grown here in the U.S. and it continues to become I think the U.S. is going to be one of the larger, one of the biggest, behemoths of soccer in the next 10 years, just based on the change that has happened in culture and player development. Maybe something in there. I don't know. At some point, I've always thought about going back to Costa Rica and doing something in terms of I don't want to say politician, like politics or something like that, but I'd get involved in some degree and kind of help the country become a little bit more like market friendly, I think is the word.
Sure.
It's a country that has a lot to offer, and there's a lot that hasn't been maximized and presented correctly.
Right.
So we'll see. Maybe that's down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I honestly don't know, man. I have no idea what other journey
No plan B.
I would have ended up. I can't tell you the answer to that.
That's good. You have no plan B, and you're put on the spot, and you really don't. This is what you've dedicated your life to. And man, I wish you the best of luck. You're killing it right now. You're doing great. And all I need to do now is get my hands on a bottle. I need to try it out.
We'll take care of that. We'll take care of that. No problem on that one.
That would be awesome. Hey, Carlos, thank you so much for coming on the show. Carlos Soto, founder of Nosotros Tequila. Good luck, my friend. I will have you back on.
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. All right. And that is going to do it for our show this week. Big thanks to Carlos Soto and Nosotros Tequila. Absolutely fantastic brand. I cannot wait to try it. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. If you're a first-time listener, you can listen to all of our episodes on pretty much any music or podcast streaming service. That's Google, Apple. We're also on Spotify and about 8 other ones that I'm not going to mention. If you also want to check out all of them in one place with much more information, you can go to our website, www.totspodcast.com. We post every single Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope to see you next week, and I'll see you next time.